welcome back to Rooted in Muddy Waters podcast. I'm your host, Tomikaya. This is your podcast about all things healing, growth, and enlightenment, healing all aspects of self, growth to our higher selves, and enlightenment for the tools that we need to do so. Today, I'm super excited because I have a guest. With me today, I have the owner and creator of The Leaf of Life and Dots and Doodles. I have Zykuria with me. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course, I'm so excited to chat with you, have good conversations, good vibes.
Yeah. So I met her last year.
Has it been a year already?
I think so.
Wow.
Just about.
Yeah, because I did my first, I think, NOMA market. It's been like a little under a year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, and we have very similar things in common. She also dabbles in herbs as an herbalist. She's a creative, and I see that you've been on this mission of uplifting others in inner child healing.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to have a conversation about inner child healing, and just have some girl talk.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, first of all, how you been?
I've been good. I've been taking a much needed break. We kind of chatted about that earlier with Dots and Doodles and kind of revamping for the springtime and rebirth energy. So just trying to make sure I'm resting. I am very prone to, like, when I get my creative vibes, I'm excited. I'm just going. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, wait, why am I tired? So.
Oh, your body going to let you know.
It's going to let you know. If you don't rest, it's going to make you rest.
Yes.
So just taking inventory and resting and just getting excited for, new things I have in store.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's amazing. New things are always good. New year is upon us.
Yes.
Nature's new year. I remember, like, when the fiscal new year, January started, everybody was like, January was trash, like, we need a do-over. And I'm like, if only y'all understood that the reason why y'all struggling so much in January is because you're not in tune with nature, you're not flowing with nature.
Yes.
January, everything is still dormant.
In the dead of winter.
Into dead of winter. Like, this is not when you should be starting new things. This is not when you should be, you should be doing that in the new year with nature, which is end of March, beginning of April, when spring begins, because that's when everything comes back alive, everything blossoms, everything comes out of dormancy. So I just wish people would, like, get more in tune with that, and then it won't be so hard, because basically what you're doing, you're going against nature.
Literally.
And so then it's harder.
Yeah.
You're struggling a little bit more because you're out of tune with what nature is. So, but yeah.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. Just been busy.
Yeah.
Just been busy with the space. Getting the podcast back up and running, which I've been wanting to do. I haven't recorded any podcast episodes in like over a year.
That's all right.
But Spirit was like, okay, you got your own space now. You can utilize it the way that you need to. Get back to doing your podcast. And so,
it's time.
Yeah, podcast, of course, the business. Getting ready for some markets for next month. But other than that, all in all, everything's good. No complaints. Yeah, I know, right? I love that for us. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So like I said, we're talking about inner child healing. And again, like, I feel like just like so many other things, right? Inner child healing has become like trendy.
It has.
Like, everybody's like jumping on this bandwagon of trendiness, and it's kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just like trauma, and like those words come very clickbaity. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, instead of people thinking about them and using them and being intentional with them, it's just like everybody's like jumping on this bandwagon about this. So like, how do you feel about that? Like,
I definitely think that's been, like you said, a part of the new age spirituality bandwagon. It's becoming very trendy for spirituality to look a certain way, and you have to use certain talk. And I think that's where like the inner child healing and just those kind of like buzzwords, like you said, is becoming really popular. But I think, at least for me, it's really important to be intentional, like you said, about how it's used, how it's relevant, how it can be beneficial to everybody. So that's really been the mission that I've been on lately, just kind of trying to like destigmatize the popular term of inner child healing. What is it really, and how can everybody benefit from it? It's really just Yeah, it's just like an all-encompassing term. I think whether we're aware of it or not,
yeah, exactly.
Everybody is on their own inner child healing journey. So
yeah,
just, bringing that awareness to it is really important to me.
Yeah, because I love like people's like, oh well, I mean, it just like you say, clickbaity words. It's like, okay, but are y'all being intentional with these words that you're using and the actions behind these words?
Or are you saying it just
are you just saying it just to get attention or to get views or whatever the case may be? Because I mean, that seems to be the society that we're in now. People use certain words to gain certain attention, and I'm like, but no, like let's dissect that. Let's look a little bit deeper into that. So for people who aren't aware or don't understand what inner child healing, can you give us a snippet of what that is?
So I always say I like to start by defining the inner child or what it means to me. I like to say the inner child is our core of both our conscious and our unconscious belief systems, our core creativity, really just like our authentic self before we were, I would say, programmed or told by the world who we are supposed to be to fit in, to make people, more comfortable. And so inner child healing is really just getting to the root of that, whether it be a trigger that you have or the way you communicate with people, or if you find yourself reliving the same relationships, dating the same person, all of that has a core, it has a root. And so inner child healing is really having those conversations with yourself or even, with the people that were involved in your upbringing, your parents, your school, all of that plays a role into, how you're formed. And so just getting to the root of that, understanding why you are the way you are, and giving grace to those parts of yourself that maybe were in survival mode or picked up those habits because they had to survive. Just really giving your younger self compassion, but understanding that you don't have to stay in that state of survival or that state where you develop those core beliefs or, just those ways of being that you stay so stuck in because you don't feel like you know of any other way. So for me, it's just being that safe space for people to be able to go on that journey, or maybe even for some people that are aware that they need to change, but it's just kind of like the integration part. They don't know how to move on or take the next step.
Okay.
All of that is inner child healing.
It is vast and abundant for sure. And it's funny that you said, so I was reading this article, and the article is called Embracing Inner Child Work, Reparent and Heal Your Inner Child. It was published last year, but it was a part of the article that just really stuck with me. And it says, within each of us resides an inner child, a reservoir for emotions, memories, and beliefs from our past, as well as the aspirations and dreams that guide our future. And when it got to that part of the article, I stopped. I was like, okay, I really wanted to dissect that. I took out my journal and I started writing. I'm like, how does little Tomikaya, how does what she feels and her aspirations and dreams, how has that now guided me to where I currently am on my journey? And if I could imagine or just duplicate little Tomikaya, it would be my son. He is and that's the way I was, very loving, very caring, wanted to look out for other people, very sweet, very family oriented. That's how he is, and that's how I was, and I'm still that way, so it's little Tomikaya, I'm now growing Tomikaya, but I'm still doing the same things, just in different ways. I'm an herbalist, I'm a mother, I'm a friend. I still love to see people be loved on, and I still love to love on people. So all of that, even though I'm bigger now, that has followed me through and then helped me to create and go down the journey of my aspirations and my dreams. So I just thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, especially even what you said about your son kind of being, I guess, a representation of you. I've heard that with a couple of parents' experiences of how their children help them tap into their inner child, or even their children kind of being a catalyst for reparenting themselves. I find that really interesting too. So I always like to say every experience is a reflection. So whether that be your relationship with your children, or you're looking down at your life path and you realize, oh, I'm doing exactly what younger version of me wanted to do, just just an adultier way of doing it. So that's always been the case for me. I've always been a crafty kid, always outside. Just give me some papers and a crayon and I'll find something to do.
Oh yeah,
so
for sure.
It's interesting seeing how even that translates into dots and doodles, my creative business.
You're a Cancer, right?
Sagittarius.
Yeah. We had this conversation before, but yeah. Yeah, same here. Like, you know, I've always been a lover of music as a child. Like, for me, dancing has always been therapeutic for me. And when I get in a funk, when I know, like, I need to move some energy in my body, I will put on music in my house and just dance.
Dance it
out. But like you said, like, you know, just pinpointing and saying, like, oh, I still have that part of me that still resides in me. Like, oh, this still resides in me. This is, you know, why I'm on this path. Because, but yeah, it was a really good article. And I thought that I just had to stop and like, wait a minute, where's my journal?
I like the way they phrase that, like your dreams, your aspirations.
Yeah, it's like a reservoir of emotions. Like, I was like, oh, if that's not the truth.
Yeah, it really is. Because even down to like anger sometimes, rage, or even the way you handle rage. I know for me, and I'm sure you might be able to relate to this in the Black community, like the way anger was expressed, we weren't really taught how to express it. So that was a very untapped emotion for me. So even learning how to channel that or communicate with people, you know, in my adulthood, that was a part of my inner child.
Or even being told as a child, like, you don't have a right to be mad.
Exactly. Or that's considered as an attitude.
Yeah.
You know?
Just because I'm expressing
an emotion
and how I feel. I feel that 100%.
That's definitely been.
So why would anyone want to go into this journey of inner healing, child healing? Because, like, I mean, I feel like inner child healing that's very, very, like, pinpoint down to us dealing with past things that we have been through, experienced, and all the things. Yeah. And I know just doing a basic, natural healing of the self, right, it can be hard. Yeah. Right? And some things could come up that we don't want to face and that we don't want to deal with. So like why would anybody want to take this journey?
I know, right? Just like you want me to go back to my past, the stuff that sucks.
You want to bring up all this stuff,
and you want me to deal with it? Like what? That don't even sound fun. What's the perk? I get it, but I really think it's just it comes down to like the quality of life that you want to have. Do you want to be present or do you want to constantly be reactive? And so if you find yourself a person that maybe is constantly reactive, constantly triggered, constantly anxious, you know, whatever the case may be, I just think that that's just a messenger, an indicator of, okay, well, it's time to sit back and think about, you know, one, what do you want your life to look like from a state of being present, and how do you get there? And so for me, the how was inner child healing, even though I didn't know that that's what it was called at the time. Just coming down to even the way I handled anxiety, fear, you know, and creativity, which is why I call myself an inner child and creativity coach. I think that goes hand in hand. Is just getting to a state of where your curiosity and your creativity is larger than your fear. That's been the goal for me. And so I feel like people in their own way, you get to that state of like, okay, I'm ready for a change. I'm ready for life to look different. I'm ready to feel like I'm in the driver's seat rather than in the passenger seat, you know, just letting it happen.
Or in the back seat.
You know, just not even, nowhere in the front.
Not even close to the steering wheel.
So I just think that's the value of it. Just being able to really take a look at the way you handle things, have like a bird's eye view of where it started. And it's not necessarily that you're doing this because, oh, I'm never gonna be triggered again, because we know that's not how that works. But it's just building those tools so that the next time you do get triggered or the next time you do have those experiences, you trust yourself enough to know that you have the tools to deal with it.
So where would we start? Like, what would be a good place to start when it comes to inner child healing?
I would say the thing that like triggers you the most, and have like a curiosity about that, because I think a lot of the stigma that comes with healing, or the things that make it out to be like a depressing experience, which it isn't always, is that people are taught to, or maybe made to feel like they have to come from a place of self-judgment, where really I like to come from the perspective of self-discovery. And that's where the curiosity comes in. So if, for example, you find yourself getting angry or upset at somebody that said something or that triggered you, having that curiosity to be like, okay, why do I feel that way? Where's that coming from? What can I get from that? You know, and that shifts it from the self-judgment to the self-discovery. And just having that constant curiosity, of that constant, I like to say, lifelong student mentality, I think that kind of removes the negative stigma out of it. So I would just start from what triggers you, or what just ignites something in you, whether that's a positive or a negative emotion. And just start with that and be curious about it.
Okay. That's interesting. Because also when you talk about like you know, I feel like for me, starting my inner child healing, which I am still on that journey. I am still on my journey. Literally just had a conversation with my husband. You know, we talk about how people have like daddy issues, mommy issues, and things like that. But that all ties into us doing our inner child healing and healing from those things. And for me, the first thing for me was to be able to detach myself from it and to just like sit on the outside of it and observe it. Okay, why are these emotions coming up for me? You know, pinpoint exactly what was the trigger? Like, what in this sentence or what in this moment was able to bring this emotion up out of me?
Right.
And for me, journaling has always, like, I have to get it out. If not, then it would just, my mind, I have to, like, in this moment, this happened. This was said, okay, let's go deeper. Let's dissect this. What in this moment triggered you? Oh, it took me back to when this happened. It took me back to a situation where I felt like I didn't have control.
Right.
I was powerless in this situation. It took me back to that, and those feelings and those memories came up, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In that moment. So it's like, it's not, and then depending on who it is that caused that trigger, right? Because sometimes we can like, oh, that person triggered me. Okay, first of all, well, is that someone that is close to you, that you love, that you are friends with, that you're in a relationship with? You know, have that conversation with them, so that you then, which my husband is really, really good at. He's really good at helping me to dissect things. Like, we have a conversation. Like, whoa, wait a minute, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, why do you feel this way? What happened in this moment that made you feel this way?
Yeah.
And then have that person, if that person wants to take on that task, to help you get through that.
Exactly.
I think having a good support is crucial.
For sure.
Even if it doesn't even have to be the people that cause the trauma or the heartache. It can be people that you trust to be able to be vulnerable with.
Yeah, having that community.
Yeah, to be able to open that space up to help you get through that.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting what you said with journaling. I'm a huge journaler too. I think it's just nice to have like a log of just like you in different phases and being able to connect the dots with that. But even what you said with like mommy issues or daddy issues being triggered, and then that takes you back to a childhood experience, that makes you realize over time that a lot of the beliefs that you have about yourself started with a voice that was never yours to begin with.
Your family origin.
Yeah, and I heard something along the lines of, I believe it's from ages up until like 5 or 7. Just that time period is basically just the foundation of how you think, how you act, how you behave. And so just to think that small period of time within the scope of your entire life determines how you show up. Like just that short period of time of you being a child. So having to be an adult and then go back and just dissect that whole thing, it does take a lot of work. But like you said, being curious and having that community, even people, whether it be a coach or just like people that you trust, to be able to like dissect that with you and hold space for you, has been really huge. And I'm grateful, at least on my end, having like parents that were open to change, because a lot of the things that I had to deal with as well was within my family dynamic. My parents are now separated, but the process of that separation and the way they communicated was very toxic, and a lot of it affected the way I deal with emotions and just even the way I'm triggered by confrontation. So being able to go back to them and then reflect that back to them, have those conversations. Hey, this is what hurt me. This is how I felt. And then giving them that perspective of, you know, having them go on their own journeys and then being open to reflect and change has been a huge part of my journey as well. So I would say community, whether it's family or not, is important, because I know not everybody has the opportunity to go back to the people that hurt them to be able to have those conversations. But even, you know, just being able to reparent, I think that's a huge part of where that comes in. Having those conversations with yourself, nurturing yourself. It can literally look like even like hugging yourself, because sometimes our inner child really needs that that support. So that's been huge.
That's interesting. I love that for you, that you have parents who were willing to do the work and see and make the change, because not all of us have that. You know, and not to say that, you know, one of the things I learned on my journey is that especially when I was in therapy years ago, it really helped me to, like, it's like something just clicked in my mind, is like, our parents are also people, right? Because when we're children, it's like our parents are like gods to us,
Yeah,
right? Like literally, like we look up to them, we admire them, we want to be like them, we follow them around the house, we want, like, you know, we just really love our parents. And then when something happens, it's just like that, like they really, like, it just breaks us, right?
Yeah.
But when I was again, years ago in my 20s, when I was in therapy, like, it just, like, having a conversation with my therapist, like, it, like, really clicked, like, oh, like, my mom was a person before me. She was a person when she had me. She was her own person dealing with her own things. Mm-hmm. And whether she was able to deal with them healthily or not, that's not on me.
Yeah.
That's still something that she has to and has to and will have to deal with.
Yeah.
But I feel like if we, you know, take our parents off that pedestal and realize, like, they are people, they are going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And there are some parents that are willing to make the change and see where the faults are to be able to mend and grow that relationship.
Yeah.
But there's some parents that aren't.
Right.
So, like, and so for me, just being able to recognize that and also, like, distance myself from people that I know aren't on the same train with me. Yeah. And going on that same ride with me to be able to do better and be better. But yeah, that's super important. I'm glad that you have that, because not everybody has that.
Yeah, I would say that's been like a huge part of just the wisdom that I've been able to develop at an early age. And just being able to have those conversations with parents that are willing to learn and grow. And like you said, a huge part of that too has been like taking them off that pedestal, realizing that they did the best that they could with what they had. Mm-hmm. That's all that we're ever really doing. Mm-hmm. And so even down to like that being a mindset shift that I developed of, I always like to say my favorite exercise lately has been a yes and. Mm-hmm. So yes, my parents did the best that they could, and their best still caused harm. Or, you know...
I love that.
You know, something along those lines. So being able to recognize that multiple truths can exist at once. Like, yeah, maybe your parents did hurt you. Maybe they did, you know, cause issues that you'll have to heal from. Mm-hmm. But recognizing them as people, that I think that's where the grace comes in. Yeah. With allowing them to just be human before parents, and then you can extend that grace to yourself, even the way that you handle, you know, just anything that happens in the world. So that the yes and has been really powerful for me.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Well, say it again.
Yes, and.
Yes, but the one specifically you said, yes, my parents did the best they could, and
their best still caused harm. And that's okay.
That I really love that term. That I think just that term alone will like help like shift someone's perspective on something.
Because I think what I've heard, at least a lot of people's experiences, is they feel like if they're working on themselves or they're healing themselves, that negates maybe like the anger or whatever the case that they have with their parents. But you can hold space for both, and that's just part of the human experience, you know, just having to juggle all of those emotions. So yes and.
I love that. I love that so much. So we talked about, you know, where someone could start. Are there different ways of addressing inner child healing? So I talked about how I address mine, right? And mine has been, you know, being able to detach and be able to observe what I'm feeling in the moment, and then straightly go to journaling, and then also go to people that I'm comfortable with, to be vulnerable with if I feel like I need to have someone just to bounce my thoughts off, to dissect it. But what are some other ways that a person... I know maybe going to therapy is probably a good one. Having a coach is a good one. But for people who choose to not go those routes, like what would be other routes of doing inner child healing?
I definitely say journaling is definitely one of the top ones that I'd recommend, because just being able to get your thoughts out on paper, and you just be surprised that over time being able to like look through your entries and just noticing the patterns. I think that's the biggest indicator for what you can start with. Even down to meditation. Visualization is a really powerful one for me as well, especially for like especially triggering topics, or whether it be like just whatever experiences happened. Being able to visualize your adult self going back to your child self, and just being that support system or whatever that person was that they always needed. I always say that's a pretty, I'd say, beginner-friendly way of starting. And it's really powerful being able to be that safe space that maybe that younger version of you always needed. So visualization is a big one for me. Somatics, which I know you mentioned earlier, that dancing really helps. I think that it can even be as simple as dancing, you know, because you'd be surprised at how much emotion that you can bring up from moving parts of your body, or whatever stagnant energy, you that you don't even know is there from certain experiences, especially as women. Our wombs holding on to trauma.
It holds everything. Yes.
So
yes.
I think even somatics can be really powerful. Just meeting yourself where you're at.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up too, because one of the big things, like, I really, really try to get women to realize that our womb is our core, right? We hold so much there. We hold everything. Like, it is basically the center of our creation, not just creation of life, but also creation of thoughts and creativity and energy. And what we hold there matters, and it comes out in us in multiple ways, right? So if we're holding on to trauma, if we're holding on to hurt, if we're holding on to guilt and shame, all of that shows up. It even shows up in our menstrual cycles. Why am I cramping so bad? Why is my, so you think your uterus,
all over the place.
You think your uterus is attacking you, but like, no, she's telling you y'all need to have a talk.
I'm trying to tell you something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so glad you brought those, because that's really, really big when it comes to who we are as women and how we hold all of that in our core. Yes, I love that. So what are some misconceptions that people have about inner child healing, do you think? Do you think there are any misconceptions other than it being very trendy at the moment?
Misconceptions. Let me see. Other than it being trendy, like, that's honestly, I would say that would be the biggest.
That would be the one, right?
Social media can just take a lot of things out of context.
Yes. Because I wonder, like, how many people like, oh, I'm gonna do this inner child healing, and they get into it and be like, whoa.
Yeah, and I think,
you know what I'm saying,
think that it can be just kind of like the light and fluffy, like, oh, I'm gonna take myself out on a date to the park, or I'm gonna draw or do activities that my inner child self like to do, which is good. But I think that can be like an easy way to stay on the surface level of inner child healing. And so I guess the biggest misconception is that there isn't any depth to it. Because you do think of the inner child and immediately you do think of, like,
coloring books and park,
playing in the mud, so
dancing in the rain, which I dance in the rain now.
I love me a good rain dance.
Me and my son be like, Mom, can we go dance in the rain? Not today, because it's like 30 degrees outside and it's raining.
Maybe not.
On a nice sunny rainy day, or a warm rainy day, but not a cold rainy day. It's too cold. Yeah, it's too cold. But
so, I think that'd be the biggest thing, and especially with social media, like, that's in and of itself is a very surface level thing. You see the highlight reels of a lot of people's lives, and so I think just like I said, thinking that there's no depth to it, but having that conversation, or just conversations about what inner child healing means, how it can look different to other people. I think that's what's been most important to me lately. It's just starting the conversation. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. So, like, are there any, like, specific tools, researches, or practices that you would recommend for individuals who are interested in even embarking on this journey of inner child healing?
Yes. So, I am personally a huge lover of Pinterest.
Oh, I love Pinterest. That's where I get all my recipes from.
The best. So, honestly, even something simple as looking up inner child healing prompts on Pinterest, just a starting point. Really deep diving into the things that you like doing as a child, because even though I didn't mention that was surface level, I think that can also be a good entry point to go deeper if that's your intention. Or even down to that, just being very clear about, like, what is your intention with inner child healing. Maybe it's I want to love myself more. Maybe it's I want to learn how to communicate better. Maybe it's I want to be open to receiving help. So setting an intention and just getting really clear about why you want to do this, but also being open to let that shift as you go, being open to the messages that you receive and the things that you learn. But definitely Pinterest, or just any kind of that is the beauty of technology, I will say. It's got its pros and cons.
It does.
But just in the sense of being able to access that information where you at, without having to necessarily, like, work with a coach or a therapist, if that's not something that is accessible to you, is a good starting point. Or even somatics on YouTube, they have, like, some somatic or inner child healing meditations that it'll walk you through. So I would say those two would be my biggest starting points for, like, a beginner friendly way to kind of intro into childhood and child healing.
All right, nice.
Yeah.
So what would you say, or what advice would you give to someone who is, again, like, other than Pinterest, like, what would be something that you would consider, suggest that someone consider when exploring their inner child healing, but they're, like, hesitant? They're like, I don't know, if I should even start this journey, because I don't know where it's going to take me.
Right. I've heard, and it just popped up into my mind, it was this quote that I had heard on like some Instagram story, but I think it's really relevant, and it's find what shames you and love it to death. And so I think that the way you look at it, I guess, depending on how you look at it, can be a very just like simple way of not adding too much pressure to inner child healing, because it's really not meant to be that. It really is just being curious of, you know, maybe whatever it is that you're experiencing, like we talked about, going back to the core, or whatever event that you can think of in childhood where that voice started, and just finding ways to love yourself better. So maybe in the beginning, maybe that looks like a self-care night, you know, learning how to tend to yourself. Maybe that looks like allowing yourself to say no, you know, if you suffer from people pleasing, which I can definitely relate to that. You know, maybe it looks like setting boundaries. So just finding those different parts that you hold shame around, or that you're hesitant to show other people out of fear of perception, or whatever that is, and just find different ways to love those parts of yourself.
Got it. Love it. I know, you know, even whether it's inner child healing or just doing your own like mental, emotional, spiritual healing, whatever level you are, wherever you are in your journey, I know that can lead to some people being no longer wanting to be a part of your life, or like they see you growing, they see you shifting, they see you putting up those boundaries, they see you putting certain things in place, they see you no longer being a people pleaser, right? And so I know within any type of healing, there's gain, but there's also loss.
Definitely.
And so I want people to also like kind of like think about that and kind of like prepare yourself. Don't expect it, because it's not guaranteed that those people will, you know, leave or no longer be around. But what I believe people should think about is like the people that are in your life, or the people that come to you, they're there for a reason. And sometimes there's people that you will outgrow because your energy and the vibrations that you're giving off is no longer a match to theirs. And it's okay to have that loss, and it's okay to grow through that loss. Even in your inner child healing, I think it'll be good to also practice being able to mourn certain losses as well. I think
grief is a huge part of inner child healing. Even, I guess that can be like a whole conversation in and of itself. I'm really huge, because I am like a really sensitive person. I've always been a sensitive person. Feeling my feelings, just as simple as that. And what that even looks like has been a huge part of my inner child healing. So as it relates to grief, to anger, creating a safe space for yourself to feel that, to really process it, you know, what that's prompting you to do, whether that be letting go of a relationship, whether that be, you know, taking some time to be alone, because I think a lot of the times that healing journey does require solitude before there is growth. So I definitely think the emotional part, or just allowing yourself to really process it, is a huge part. Because me personally, even though I was always a sensitive person, I realized very early how my sensitivity was perceived by other people, and I took that to be an inconvenience. So through a lot of like my teenage years, I found myself kind of going into a shell. And so a lot of my inner child healing journey was allowing myself to like let those emotions rise and process them and feel them, and, you know, not intellectualize them, because it's really easy to be like, oh, I feel this way because of this and that because of that. And the whole time you still haven't felt anything in your body at all. You're just talking the good talk. So the safe space for emotions, grief especially, even if it comes to, you know, grieving parts of your childhood that didn't go the way that you wanted them to go, or grieving maybe that version of you with that childhood that you wanted, grieving the fact that just doesn't exist. It's all connected.
It's all connected. Well, Zykuria, thank you so much for coming. I really do appreciate you. Tell the people where they can find you, what you got going on, all the things.
Okay, well, I'm Zykuria. I am a holistic health coach, so you can find my coaching page at theleafoflife.co. And if you are interested in any self-care stationery, any little cutesy fun creations, I also have dots and doodles, so you can find me there on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that good stuff.
Yay! Well, thank you so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in to the Rooted in Muddy Waters podcast, your podcast for all things healing, growth, and enlightenment, healing all aspects of self, growth to your highest self, and the enlightenment that we need to do so. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.